Welcome to the XR Magazine podcast. Dive deep with us into the mesmerizing world of immersive tech, where we bring you conversations with the trailblazers of XR, AI, and spatial computing. If you're curious about what's on the horizon and eager to be inspired, you're in the right place. Tune in and let's explore the digital frontier together. Today, we have the pleasure of being talking with Cornel Hillmann, who is a CG artist and XR designer with over 20 years of experience in the media and entertainment, advertisement, and design industry. He has worked with brands including Panasonic, Jaguar, The Future is Wild, the Singapore International Film Festival, Razor, and many others. He has lectured master classes for immersive media production, advanced 3D, VR, and media design courses at Lim Kok Wing University. He's also the author of Unreal for Mobile and Standalone VR, and UX for XR published by Press New York, a division of Springer Nature. I personally have felt a lot of gratitude coming from Cornel because he has been one of the pioneers of explaining for designers how to actually implement good UX for XR or extended reality applications. So I am very excited with this episode. I can't wait to begin. Let's do it. Thank you so much, Cornel, for being here today. I'm super excited. You are sort of my master. I let you know why later, but I'm super excited with your time, your value, and everything that you have to say today. Thank you so much. How are you doing today?
Thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm very excited, and I'm great. It's 10 o'clock in Singapore and 10 p.m. and there's so much going on at the moment, so we have plenty to talk about, I guess, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so maybe we can get started by letting us know a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so basically my background is basically in design originally. So I started actually in art direction. That was way back in the 90s. I did art direction originally for an independent record label. I was doing album covers. And then I got my first big job doing art direction for a magazine. It was a sports magazine and then a boating magazine, even though I didn't know anything about boating, but it was very exciting for me at that time. And so then that was a great time. That was in California, in Los Angeles. And back then I was always interested in 3D and anything like, building your own digital world, like world building, basically. I was always fascinated by that. And in those days it was, the software was not very accessible and the software that I could get my hands on was actually not very good. But I still was driven by that fascination, and the more I learned about it, the more eager I was to get into it. And then I finally got more into like interactive design and gaming, 3D, these kind of things. And then I moved to Hamburg, and with a partner together, we started a company, and that was in the late 90s, and that company lasted for about 10 years. We did a lot of jobs, for example, interactive applications for B2B customers, for trade shows and that kind of thing. And that was a great learning process for me to, and it was a really interesting time because the technology was progressing so fast. And at that time, I must say, virtual reality was a dream that was far away, So at that time, we talked very often about virtual reality, and, I was reading sci-fi books, but I never thought that we would actually see this happening in my lifetime, So it was really really fascinating when it actually then unfolded. A dream actually became reality. And I have to say, like the first time I came across a decent, or my first encounter with a decent VR headset was actually before the Oculus. It was in 2008. I went to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, and the GDC, and there was one booth. They had like an early prototype of a VR headset that was hooked up to World of Warcraft, So, and it was really funny, and I was so surprised that there was there was not more excitement about it, because I was totally blown away. I was like, wow, this is amazing! You're basically in World of Warcraft with this headset. I mean, it was very low resolution, and the field of view was very tiny. But I was like, this is amazing, And from there on, I thought, wow, this is, something's going to happen, because this was really something new. There was something new, that you had a consumer level VR device that showed promise. And then, sure enough, a few years later, Oculus came about, the Kickstarter in 2013. And I was lucky enough to get in a very early prototype, the first development kit, through a friend, because it was not easy to get one of those in the early days. And so that was a very, very exciting time, And since then, I've been doing things for VR. I've been developing. I've been designing. I've done workshops, seminars. I've done all sorts of things, And it has been very exciting. And as you know, my book, I very often call it a roller coaster ride, because we had all these, these hype cycles. Sometimes you have like the hype, and then you have the backlash. Where in 2016 there was a huge VR hype, and then all of a sudden, there was a huge backlash, and no one wanted to hear anything about VR anymore. And then last year we had the big metaverse hype, and then after that the big backlash. So if you're in this business in XR, you have to be, you have to have a thick skin, I would say, because you need to be able to survive that. That's one of the lessons actually that XR designers have to live with, have to learn. But on the other hand, I mean, I think these are the early growing pains of a huge industry, and we're still very early in the game, and the best is yet to come, as we know from the Apple Vision Pro introduction announcement. I mean, next year will be super exciting. I'm very excited about next year,
Yeah, for sure. Me too. I was there, of course, online watching the WWDC and everything that involved with the launching of this device, which is something new from Apple. And Apple is such a huge company. I personally, actually, all my devices are from Apple, because I like, design. Designers tend to like this type of products. And so when I knew that Apple was bringing this device, it blew my mind. I said, okay, something is happening here, as you mentioned. Something is like these companies are going towards this. But as you mentioned, there are some backlash that we need to be mindful of. So my next question is going to be about your book, which I am super excited here.
Very good.
Is UX for XR. You are the author of this book. Let's start by letting us know why you decided to write a book in the first place, which is a little uncommon. People start to create their own experiences, and of course you do. You're super professional. But why a book, and how was the process of writing it?
Actually, it was... I never had it on my mind to write a book. This is actually my second book. Do you know my first book?
It's about Unreal.
Yeah. My first book. So actually, when I wrote my first book, it came about that I spoke at a conference in Stockholm, I think, what's it called, AuraDev conference. I spoke at that conference. They invited me to speak about mobile VR. And so after that conference, a publisher contacted me and asked me, hey, do you want to write a book? And I was like, a book? Why, it never crossed my mind, And then I was like, isn't that a lot of work? And then first I thought they wanted actually for me to cover everything in VR. But I had a different idea. I wanted to talk about mostly mobile and standalone VR because I thought that is the future. But they didn't want to do that. And then I asked another publisher. So then I became ambitious. I thought I actually want, now I want it, no, I actually do want to write that book. And then I contacted A-Press, which is a division of Springer Nature, the academic publisher. And they said, yeah, let's do it. And and my first book actually did quite well, and people liked it, and it was a positive experience. Mm-hmm. And then the publisher came back to me, and then they said, hey, can you write us another book? And then I was like, oh my God, it was so much work to the first book. I mean, it really takes so much time to write a book. I mean, yes. Revisions, there's so many things go into it. You have to test. I mean, you have to be really solid with what you say. Everything you say has to be tested, and you have to make sure that every information is rock solid. And so I discussed it with the publisher, and so we decided to. I said, okay, well, we'll do something on UX for XR because the reason was actually because I thought, the XR industry is still so young, and it's still a niche. It's still a niche. We have a lot of enthusiasts, and you have like special interests. You have like a bit of enterprise, but what is needed to break through for a wider adoption? So that's a big question. And my idea was actually to look back at the last decade, what happened in the mobile economy with what UX design actually contributed to the success of the mobile economy, like so many apps and websites and digital services benefited so much from design thinking and great UX design. So basically that's the secret sauce of the booming economy of the digital economy. The last decade is actually the secret sauce is UX, is good UX design, And I thought this is really what's needed in XR, because at that point when I wrote the book, VR design was not really much driven by UX design. It was more driven by game design conventions. I write about that in my book, as you probably know. And it's a bit of a different culture, because game design is very follows genre conventions a lot, So you basically design very often for specific game genres, and but UX design has a totally different perspective. It's you really understanding the user and putting yourself in the shoes of the user and testing, iterating, and until it's right, And a lot of I noticed that very often in the VR development field, a lot of people were not actually doing that enough, I thought, because on one hand, there is a thing called game UX, that thing exists, but that's usually reduced to really UI interaction, onboarding, and, stuff like leaderboards and that kind of thing, but not really like designing a full experience, So I thought like, this must be really an important topic to cover, because so many designers are going to be shifting in the next years from flat screens, from pancake design to spatial computing. It's of course this is going to happen, and so we have to look into what's important for designers, basically, because and these designers are actually needed in the XR space because previously there weren't enough of them there, So it was dominated basically by game design and game developers, and I think actually UX designers are needed for this whole for this industry really to take off. So that's really an important thing because we have to understand what drives successful applications and how we can make VR or XR successful. And the thing is this, the problem with VR very often is, you probably know in VR we have a huge problem with retention rates. So people pick up a headset. They pick up a headset, they're excited, and then it collects dust on your shelf somewhere, and that's a real problem. People are not coming back for more, and I often call that the VR paradox, because on one hand people are very often wow, they say like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, but then they also go like, oh yeah, I haven't seen enough of that. I'm no one goes out and runs out and buys with the headset. And so the problem I see there is that it's not enough to wow people. You actually have in UX is the principle of to delight people. Delight. So that's very often lacking, the softer ways of delighting the user, instead of like just the harsh wow effect, So more the subtle comfort things, the subtleness of not only usability, but delightfulness, and so these principles are very often overlooked, in XR design that comes from a game design culture, that was actually one of the reasons why I decided to investigate this topic with this book, and I talked to a lot of people. It was very interesting to talk to ongoing projects. It was very insightful. For example, I talked to like Siemens Healthineers. They did some really advanced development for medical applications, and it was really insightful to learn the various issues people have developing good designs for XR. So that was actually what motivated me to really dive deeply into the subject and write about it and present my conclusions to the public.
Yeah, and this is an incredible guide. Even if somebody has a doubt, I invite you to go and check in Amazon the reviews. People is saying this is amazing. This book is great. It has a lot of value, very specific examples, case studies, which to create this, I imagine all the time that this takes, and to embed there, of course, showcasing the principles. It's a lot of work. So we're super grateful that you created this. Thank you so much. I see that, of course, there is some evident and maybe some not so evident differences between the traditional design that happens in 2D and the design that now happens in spatial computing. So I see that throughout the book, you discuss about object-oriented UX to approach the design, not just from the flat screens and the regular type of design, but now with the 3D elements, the objects. So my question is, if you can let us know a little bit about what changes and why you decided to present object-oriented UX.
Yeah, so the story with object-oriented UX is very interesting. So while I was researching the subject, and I talked to a lot of UX designers and developers, and in my research, I came across OOUX, object-oriented UX, and that's a framework by the design innovator Sophia Prater. She's a a very inspirational woman. She came up with this framework, and I contacted her, and we had a long discussion. And she totally agreed with what I said, because I said, hey, this is exactly what we need in XR, because it speaks the language of spatial computing. We in spatial computing, we talk about objects in space, and we see what these objects can do, what and how the user interacts with them. So basically, it's object-centered what we do. And the interesting thing is OOUX is a very specialized UX framework, but it's also very successful. So people are very happy with it. And Sophia Prater, she uses it for slightly different purposes. So she very often uses it for very complex websites. For example, when you have websites, for example, when you have let's say you have a training course and you do a search for something specific, and you have search results with a lot of information blocks that have dependencies. There's author, there's other books to the subject, and you have related information. So how do you design these kind of things which have a lot of dependencies? Mm. So she actually uses it for these very complex interactions that have a lot of object dependencies, and where you create a kind of like a hierarchy of objects. And it's just basically a coincidence, more or less, that this principle is perfect for XR design. But in XR design, we use it slightly different. It's not so much, the emphasis is not so much on the super complexity, because in XR we actually don't have these really big web pages with tons of search results. We don't have these kinds of issues. It's more of organizing your project. Basically organizing what you have. You have, let's say you have activity areas, you have different rooms, you have objectives that, stakeholders want to see in their application. So basically, object-oriented UX gives you an opportunity to bring structure and order into your project. It allows you to structure your project, and since it's so close to what we actually see in XR, because we actually are interacting with objects, it's very intuitive, so that makes it super intuitive. And another benefit is that, for example, in Unreal or also in Unity, the underlying coding language is object-oriented programming, C++, and where you very often designers don't deal much with that, but sometimes they come across, when you do a bit of scripting and stuff, you come across it. For example, you're dealing with inheritance and object-oriented parameters. And so you're already in that mindset, so you're already in that object-oriented mindset, because the way you're dealing with your game engine when you're designing, when you're putting things together. So this object-oriented UX is totally in tune with that, so you're totally in tune with your technical foundation, as well as the user experience, that you later are putting together, So I think it's really absolutely perfect for that. And I've been on Sophia Prater's podcast as well. And I really think she's an amazing woman. She's really a design innovator, I have to say. She's really, I think OOUX has huge potential to go much further, because it's just a very intuitive way of sorting information, sorting, structuring projects, structuring your design, and creating a user journey map, these kind of things. Because my problem originally was, how do we bring, the way UX designers usually work, in flat designs and pancake designs? How do we bring that into the into spatial computing, and because usually it's in traditional UX design, so for mobile and web apps, there's usually a rush to UI, because for mobile apps and web applications, what you design is basically all you done. I mean, that's all you have. The user interface is only the UI, basically. You don't have a 3D world behind that. So that's why you rush to UI. You don't, and that approach doesn't apply for XR, and that's why I thought OUX looks a little deeper. It's a deeper look at what's actually going on behind the scenes, kind of. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Definitely. It seems sometimes when people is just starting to learn about the OOUX, object-oriented seems to be confused for a spatial computing with the 3D only elements, like the object, because of the word object, right? But it's also more than that. It's also the functions between them.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you so much. So there is another aspect that I found super interesting that is not usually spoken by designers and people that is super excited about this field, which is, I am super, super stoked when you added to your book XR and mindful design. And it is because if you added this, it makes me think you have also an interesting sense of care for people as a designer, which sometimes is missing. I mean, it's part of the job. The design has to look sleek, functional, nice, good for the user, but not in depth as you added mindful design. So I'm wondering what prompted you to add mindful design and what is it about in general, if you'd like to discuss. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, mindful design in my eyes is also about empathy for the user and also about the bigger picture, because we're not only doing this for money, why we're doing this, we want to actually do something that helps people to be better or to live their full potential, but at the same time, we know that, we have issues with technology. Technology is not always great in all aspects. There are problems, as we know, with social media, even in UX design with dark patterns and these kind of things. And if we look at gaming, for example, there's problems with gaming addiction and these kind of things. So it's important to keep in mind that it's not all about money. It's not all about making your client happy or your stakeholders. It's also about true empathy, like really trying to really be true to yourself, what you contribute to the world or to other people. So it's beyond actually just the success of the project or your own bank account. It's more about what really helps people or what really matters or it's important to people or for people to live their full potential. And I think it's very often good to take a step back and remember that, that because why are we doing this in the first place, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel also designers have such a power in their hands, which is the creation of those experiences. And the creation of those experiences directly are going to impact even the health or the mental state or, this type of emotional conditions of other people in the world. So for me, it's so fundamental that every designer, in fact, should understand the importance of empathy in this sense. And even from mindful design, as you are explaining it in this book, I found it amazing because you not only speak about mindful design per se, which is one element, but also socially responsible design and digital well-being. So I think if we as designers reflect on this and bring these values to our profession, the experiences are going to be much more enriched, potentially helping with the problem that you mentioned with the retention, etc., with VR. Yeah. And at this point, as you know, there are many platforms where any person can create anything, but maybe these principles are not there. So this takes us to the educational journey that designers need to undertake. And speaking about that, I also wonder, I know you're such an amazing educator. That's why you have written these books. I wonder if you have any resources from yourself, like workshops or any type of educational resources that you could offer us to continue learning from you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Actually, there is a masterclass that I'm doing that's coming up on the Interaction Design Foundation. And that's on, let me look it up again. It's on November 16th. And I'm very excited about this one. This is about rapid prototyping for VR.
Wow.
And it's, I really like this institute a lot. It's the Interactive Design Foundation is one of the, I think if not the best place to learn, this kind of thing. Very respected, great organization. And so what this workshop is about, it's about the problem of prototyping, because I talk about it in my book. Prototyping is one of the big issues in XR, because the success usually of UX design relies on prototyping and testing, right? And prototyping very often is not easy to quickly get there to be able to test, So and this masterclass is about that. I'm going to share my learnings, my insights, my tips and tricks, and my my secret sauce, how I do things there,
The Pandora box is going to be open soon. So I'm super excited. When you were mentioning about prototyping, I am wondering how much of a designer, and this question is related with Unreal Engine, how much of a designer needs to use for prototyping visual scripting or actual C++ coding? Sometimes designers worry about that. They say, going into later stages of the prototype, I'm worried that I don't know how to code. So please let us know, how does it work?
Yeah, I think there's different types of designers, Mm-hmm. There's designers who really say, it's really up to yourself, how you define yourself as a designer. You say, hey, I do just a spatial design. I do early prototypes. So basically low fidelity. Yeah. I design a space. I design the UI, but I don't go all the way to design the interaction, While another designer says, well, I do the whole thing. I do, I do the spatial design, but I also do the full interaction. And both of them may have pros and cons, and it's not one is better than the other. It's up to the individual and their personal style and what they do best, And, very often designers use, Shapes XR, previously called Tvori in my book, and for example, Bazel, that web-based tool. Yeah. And those are great tools to really put together a presentation to pitch a project, or to do early impression testing on your stakeholders and that kind of thing, So and that may be just enough for a certain type of designer. That may be just enough, While other designers, they really want to have full control. They're more focused on the interaction part. They want to they're really specific of how the interactions are designed. And if you go into that area, you actually need to know visual scripting. Mm-hmm. And then you need to, but to be honest, it's not as bad as it looks, because there are tools, there are frameworks that make it easier, and if you're really serious about it, it's doable, it's learnable,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially this time I was mentioning previously, many designers as well want to expand their familiarity with the tools available. So not only understanding Unity, but also understanding Unreal. So that is something that many designers are looking for right now. That's why I asked you that question. And so the prototyping workshop that is coming up, what type of tools are you going to be using?
I'm actually, I'm talking more about learning principles, and I'm actually looking at everything at Unreal as well as Unity. Yeah. I personally prefer Unreal, but I know, for example, a lot of things happen in Unity. I mean, recently I was involved in a project that was Unity based. I couldn't say, goodbye. I mean, it was just the project was just too good to dismiss it, And so, for example, and I constantly test frameworks, I constantly test tools and frameworks. And for example, in the workshop, I'm going to talk about, for example, VR Builder. Are you familiar with VR Builder?
Yeah.
So VR Builder is a super nice tool for Unity, for example, because I very often do like B2B, small educational apps where you interact with objects, and VR Builder is a visual tool to quickly iterate and prototype things in Unity, for example. And but the workshop is more than just looking into that. It's really looking at the pros and cons of the different approaches, also how to best approach and what kind of projects or what tools are best for what kind of project.
That's great. That sounds absolutely amazing. I can't wait to subscribe there. It's with the Interaction Design Foundation, which we are in design, we know that this is a huge organization. It brings the best designers and the best representatives of the field in the world. So I'm super excited with you, Cornel, that you're going to be one of those amazing presenters there. And of course, you're going to be sharing a lot, all your insights and all your value. And of course, we're going to be sharing the workshop. So that's exciting. Thank you for sharing those resources with us. And so what is in the future for you? I mean, this question maybe is not the best way to say it in the future because things change all the time. But what are your aspirations or what are you envisioning right now? Do you have any project that you're working on, or what is exciting you about the future right now?
Yeah, I have a lot of things going on at the moment. Wow. So I'm working with a few partners on a social VR app, which is at its early stage. So what we're trying to do is to put together an application for XR that is able to bring people together and create meaningful, like friendship kind of the situations, where you can actually share your interests and where you, share what you're interested in, and you find people based on your interests, that kind of thing, And the original idea was to do a dating app, but then we moved away from that, and now it's more like the friendship, because some people very often want to have it's actually not about meeting people in real life. It's more digital friendships. So people that you actually may not never see in your real life, but that you keep as a digital friend that you come back to and to discuss certain things, get advice, these kind of things. Because one of the things is that we noticed was that there is really a lack of that, because very often, you have apps like VR chat and big screen and all these kind of things, but these are like completely random. You never know who you're talking to, what these people are. They come and go, disappear, and so, we want to create something that's a bit more structured and more for a bit more mature, for people that really want to exchange information, that kind of thing, So that's at a very early stage. There's lots of different ideas, and we're prototyping different concepts. So we'll see if it comes together, That's one thing. The other thing is I'm also working on a personal project. It's more like an art, kind of a dreamy, surrealist application, Unreal VR project, where I want to take advantage of the latest technology from Unreal, especially Lumen and Nanite, that allows you to have like really very rich and detailed environments. So I'm really into that. There's, for example, do you know the recently an app came out, a VR game called the Reset Project. Have you heard about it? It's like it's also an Unreal project that they also use Lumen and Nanite. So I'm watching these guys closely because they're doing a similar thing, but mine is of course different. Yeah. But what I find is interesting is that on PC VR to build like these really detailed and rich environments, and do something really outrageous, where with very surrealistic, like dreamy kind of thing, So that's what I'm working on. And then I do my my regular jobs. I've done a lot of virtual tours lately where I do web XR projects, bringing together like panoramas with embedded hotspots and 3D objects and that kind of thing, So lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, I can see. Wow, that's amazing. And I'm very excited about when you mention that you are working in this surrealist space or in this experience, because I feel you and I have a lot in common. First of all, I found inspiration from you mostly by the aspect of your book that speaks about mindful design. And I created a book I wrote a book, recently finished the first manuscript about mindful design in spatial computing, which I'm excited about that. Cool. And I found inspiration from you.
That's great.
Can you imagine the type of things that you can inspire in people? That's amazing.
That's great to hear. Yeah, thanks.
That's exciting. Yeah. And the other thing, personal projects that I like is that I have experienced a lot with generative models that create artistic type of things that I like, which are dreamscape architecture. So those are the type of things that I'm building. And my aim is to build them in 3D as well. So we have many things in common. That's amazing. It's never a coincidence. I'm so glad that you came today to the podcast. Thank you so much, Cornel. Is there anything that you wish I had asked you today and maybe I forgot?
I think we covered everything.
Yes.
One last thing I should also mention, I'm also trying to write a new book, which I take, but I'm going to take my time, so it's more where I also like speculate a little bit about the future and it's a bit more of a personal book also about, how it was to work for certain companies and kind of these kind of things, So
that's exciting. Are you publishing it with a press or another?
So I'm first of all, I'm not worrying about who's going to publish it. I'm writing it first, but I'm going to take my time. It's going to take a while, because I'm doing a lot of things at the moment, so I have to spread out my time.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, thank you so much, Cornel. It's been such an amazing interview, a lot of value for sure, and we're inviting anyone to share this episode with your family or friends that are in the same field that be very interested in this one, and subscribe and like, because sharing is caring. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot.